What's going on, guys? We are back, and it's ROSTERMANIA time. Everyone loves it. We have a long off season, but the world champs possibly making moves. Pretty much everyone is probably going to make a move. So before we get into it, and I want to bring up like Achilles' Twitter, and we're just going to scroll through and kind of give our thoughts about each move. We'll put his Twitter in the bio. Make sure you follow him and all of that stuff. So we'll do all that. But before we get into it, there's a couple things I want to bring up. First off is, yes, BDS is very likely making a move. We'll get to that at the end. But when we look at these rumors, keep in mind a couple of things. One, players always lie. Do not believe a player, like say he goes into an interview and is, just doing his PR shamble or whatever you want to call it. For instance, last year, I believe it was Beast Mode, went into interviews and was like, yeah, we would love to, keep the team together, team with calm. Literally everyone knew that was not going to happen. That was absolutely not going to happen. And we saw it didn't, right? But when you're in an interview, you don't want to give away too much because you don't know what's actually going to happen or not. Players generally will just be like, yes, I love my team. But you can't read into it much, right? You can't read into what players actually say online. Generally speaking, it is very hard to tell truth from a lie, so keep that in mind. Number two is it's early. It's September. We have October, we have November, we have December, and then we'll start sometime in January, right? When these rumors start happening in December, more likely they would happen. But some of these moves, I think, could potentially happen, could potentially not. And we'll go over like kind of the whole list of what is happening, and I'll give you my thoughts. Again, we're just going to scroll through Achilles' Twitter because he's the one with the scoops. Always follow him on Twitter, like if you want to keep up to date with what is going on. I was going to screenshot a bunch of them, but he's put out so much stuff that I figured let's just rapid fire scroll through his Twitter. We'll see a lot of football stuff as well. But we'll just get our thoughts about all the moves happening. So let's bring it up. Oh, actually, I think we should really get to the source, though. I think we should really go to Alpha Cap, though, first. Let's go to him, and let's see what his quotes are from Achilles. And then, I kid. But we're doing the same thing anyway, Alpha, so don't worry about it. I'm just taking his stuff, and, I'm going to explain what I think my thoughts are based on this. So, let's start down here with Gen.G. So Gen.G is moving on without apparently Jack. Very likely without Chronic, it seems like. My assumption would be they would build their own first killer at that point based on this tweet, but who knows? That team was going to implode probably after what happened at the World Championship. So I believe that this would happen. Personally, I think a lot of NA moves will be around LJ. I assume LJ will leave Space Station, is my guess, and where he goes will determine where all the other pieces fall. So apparently Jack being the first one exiting Gen.G is a little bit of a surprise to me because I could see a team like a First Killer, Abjack, and LJ doing very, very well. I think Chronic is probably the odd man out here, in my opinion. But, teams have different opinions. But as of now, we'll just say Gen.G completely disbanded, and they're going to be building based on that. Gen.G also is going to be very likely going with a lower budget team. We'll probably see that in a bit on Twitter. But I think most orgs right now are just going to drop out until the new season. And I bet now that this is our second year doing this, a lot of orgs are now going to only sign players for 9 months. They're going to sign them through January through September. One, that'll cover whatever EWC does next time. I assume also in contracts there'll be clauses where you have to do EWC. Would be my thoughts after what happened with Beast Mode in G2. So I bet most orgs are just going to do that and be like, hey, now we get 3 months back of pay. And also, the salaries of players is incredibly high in Rocket League, which a lot of players don't give back that much to an org in terms of value. And I think orgs try and look to Epic to get value out of it, but I always think that's kind of weird. But yeah, so I assume A lot of contracts going forward will probably do that, unless you really want a player, then you keep them on for a couple years or something like that. But yeah, Gen.G moving on. We got some football tweets, a few tiers lurking around the scene. So I do want to read this one. A few tier 1 orgs lurking around the scene, not expecting anything to be signed until end of November, December, which makes sense. Cloud9 also looking for a roster, but they're still very much in the exploring phase. A lot of orgs, I guarantee you, are coming in to Rocket League because of EWC. EWC is so incredibly important now, I think, to a bunch of esports because of that ginormous prize pool they have for EWC. For like, if your club does well, you can earn, I think it was like $4 million was first place last time around. This is basically what it seemed like Cloud9 did this past year when they signed their team, trying to sneak into EWC, maybe get some points. That's what it felt like, at least. Like, there's no confirmation of that. But I guarantee you a lot of orgs are going to be looking to sign teams that have a potential to do well at EWC because they want that giant prize pool. Now, it will depend on how much money these players can get out of these teams and how many good teams are actually available. I bet a lot of orgs will try and get some teams. I don't know about pricing, but if they don't get these top teams, then they probably won't even bother, is my guess. Moving on here. We have a bunch of stuff here. A lot of retweets. A lot of exploring options, like First Killer exploring his options as well from Gen.G, again, going for a smaller budget team, very likely. We're staying Rocket League. We're sorting our options given the long off season as league resets to a new model. Yeah, like I think most orgs wanted to make sure this was like a new model, and now we have another year of this, of January through September. I think most orgs can now plan around that, right? A lot of orgs probably didn't expect it at first for this year, and they couldn't really plan around it yet, but now they can definitely plan around it more. I have to sneeze. We'll see if it comes out, but for now, we'll keep going. We're going to read through here. So most of these teams are going to be splitting up. Like Digger allowing me to explore options for the new season. This is from Evo. I am more motivated than ever. I want to win everything. DM's open. Yada, yada, yada. Of course, pretty much every team should implode and figure out who they want to build around now. When you have a long off season and you have a long year ahead of you, I think a lot of teams are trying to find that magic bullet. And if you just had a team that was mediocre, there's no point of staying together. For an org's sake, like if you're not a major team, if you're not a team that can also qualify for EWC, then what's the point, right? What is the point of this squad? We need to rebuild. We need to find something new to try and get to a major. No org is like, I'm happy in 8th place in North America. Like, no. You get barely anything for it. You get barely any exposure. There's no reason for that, right? You're going to explode all these teams and try and build anew and see if it works, right? They always say, don't fix what's not broken. Well, when things are broken, instead of getting the same piece that's probably going to break again, I don't know, I'm going with a weird analogy here. But basically, let's buy brand new parts that are not exactly the same as what we once had and see if it flies better, right? That's basically what we're doing here. We have some talk about Resolve and how much money they made. Didn't make much money at all, or barely any profits. I think it was like 3,000 decals. But I think that's a bigger conversation to have about orgs and stuff. But we're going to try and focus on roster moves here. So here's another one. Sources. First Killer and LJ are a duo heading into RLCS 2025 season. No lock third at the moment. I get everyone wants to be very excited about this move. I would say don't be too excited yet. I assume LJ is going to explore all options he has, right? And same with First Killer, right? Because he's exploring his options. First Killer and LJ as a duo makes sense for right now. But if like G2's like, hey, LJ, do you want to join G2? LJ's going to go, right? There's no question about that. So yes, right now, they're experimenting being a duo, trying to find a third. One thing that is when you're a top talent in, say, North America or wherever, if you can lock in your team earlier, you have more potential to sell yourselves to an org, to a T1, to a Cloud9. So if LJ is not getting a call from G2, I assume First Killer wouldn't get that call anyway. But I could see LJ getting that call. Like if you're not getting that call from G2, then First Killer and LJ should find a third as soon as they can. Once they know that G2 is not an option, and then you go around and you sell yourselves to these orgs that, again, like if these players are smart, they have bargaining power because of EWC. That does help a lot. Be like, hey, we could be number 2 in NA very easily at a bare minimum, right? What will you pay us? Because we're going to get you lots of points at EWC, very likely, top 4 team in the world, yada, yada. So we'll see how that all plays out. But for right now, I would say First Killer and LJ as a duo makes sense. 2 free agents, probably the 2 top free agents, or at least LJ technically is not a free agent right now, but they're going to come together and try and form a team. Unless, again, if a G2 calls, these guys are going to go running, would be my guess. More football. Complexity. I want to talk about complexity here a bit. We don't know exactly what the roster will be going forward. So we'll see how that all works out. But complexity is going to be competing in North America for RLCS 2025. Makes sense. They're a North American org. They want to be in North America, so I could see why they would do it. I don't know what this roster technically is. We'll see with contracts and all that stuff. I assume changes will be made. They didn't make the World Championship, so we'll see how that all pans out. But they should field a pretty competitive roster, in my opinion, going into North America next year to make it even harder for North American teams to make it to these majors and World Championship. So expect complexity possibly to make moves, but I would say it's very, very likely to be in North America. Again, I said don't take every rumor for fact, but I would say that one's probably pretty much a lock from what I've seen. Keep going. So T1 exploring options. I mentioned this earlier. I don't know if I mentioned it with the tweet itself, but T1 again. A lot of orgs, a lot of big name orgs that are very good in other games will very likely try and look into this offseason roster mania for Rocket League and see if they can pick up a top team. Guarantee you, number 1 on that list is an LJ First Killer duo. If someone can get them, then they'll be very, very happy. So expect top orgs to bid for them. And then if they do get them, expect the other top orgs to very likely drop out, in my opinion, if they can't field a good roster. All right, keep moving forward. We'll talk about FIFA E in a different video, but I have some thoughts about that, but we don't want to make this video too long. We're already at 13 minutes. Keep going. Okay, here's some EU moves coming up here. So K Corp will be moving forward with that Rise heading into the RLCS 2025 season. I don't think this is too unexpected. I think if they're going to make a move, Rise would probably be the one. I feel like Rise had a little bit of an off year. And they're not going to move Vatira for sure. And Nato has been very good. So I could see them trying different things. It's going to be a reorganization of the top again. I expect Rise to be on one of those top 4 European teams. I don't expect that to change unless he goes to NA or something. But I expect these players to all shift and move to different teams. I think the only player that might be left out of, like, say, a Gentlemates, a K Corp, a BDS, a Vitality, would, I could see an Alpha being left out. I feel like Alpha had a pretty bad showing this year towards the later half. Him and Rado are, like, the 2 question marks if other people come in. But I think Rado, has a better chance to stay with Vitality than Alpha does. So we'll see how that all pans out. But yeah, Rise, very likely off that team. And then BDS, World Champs, are not expected to stick together despite winning EWC and RLCS 2024 Worlds back-to-back. The thing is, if you're not named KDOP, trying to have 2 successful seasons back-to-back with the same roster is very, very difficult. We know KDOP has done that before, way back in the day with Gale Force and Dig. Then he moves on to a Vitality in Season 7. K-Dot, Fairy, and Scrub, they won Season 7. They made the finals of Season 8. That was great. They still made a roster move after that. In Season 9, they made the grand finals with Alpha and for Scrub. And then they won Season X, even though BDS kind of dominated that entire year. If you're not named K-Dop, it is very difficult to have the same roster and do that in back-to-back seasons. Like NRG, they won Season 8. They got 3rd place in NA in Season 9, which is not great. Then G2 won Season 9. They were 5th best NA team until Rizzo left. So they didn't make roster moves there. We know what happened with BDS. When they won the last time around, they had to make a roster move to become relevant again. And they also had to make roster moves from Season X to Season 21, 22 to even be relevant to win that World Championship. So, yes, they did win Fall Major, but they had to make moves after that. So, pretty much every single season, it feels like teams have to move. We know what happened with Vitality, right? Season 23 champs, back-to-back major, and then World Championships, and then their best finish was a top 4, right? So, trying to be the same roster for an extended period of time, generally in Rocket League, does not seem to pan out when you're at the top, at the very least. So I think pretty much every year we're going to see this, teams moving around. I think there was a lot of question marks around last year about Vitality, if they would move Rado or not. And now this year, I think it's more about, will they move Alpha? But in general, it seems like making changes to their team is smart. Monkey Moon has said, I believe in an interview or his stream, I think it was, that he knows making roster moves actually helps. And like he's been through that before. So he expects them to make moves. I think there was a couple other tweets up here about Exotic being a free agent because his contract is over. I think a lot of people are pinning Exotic to Vitality. And honestly, I think that makes a lot of sense. I could see a Zen, Exotic, and then we'll see what their third is. So that seems to make sense. Drawley has a buyout, I believe, is in a tweet later on. I could see a Monkey Moon, Drawley, and one other player kind of working. The problem is Monkey Moon, for like last year, kind of got left out of the EU Power Shuffle. And then he formed his own team and it worked. Looked like obviously won the World Championship. But generally, there's the big 3, right? There's Vatira, Zen, and Monkey Moon. They're on their 3 different orgs. These orgs are not going to get rid of those players. We'll see how those moves actually work, but I don't expect them to combine at any point, right? So we'll see how these rosters pan out. I think Exotic, he's going for the triple crown. You know, he was with Batira, he's with Monkey Moon, now goes to Zen. I could see that making a lot of sense. Drawley, it really just depends on how many more people move. I could see an Itachi coming over to one of these squads. There's been no talk about mates splitting up, but I think Itachi, I could see him trying to upgrade. Because mates, yes, they did win a major, but they've had their troubles at times too. I think Itachi, I could see him trying to improve and go to a different team. I could see a Zen, Exotic, and Itachi team being insane. I could see Itachi going with Atto and Vatira. That could be that could work insanely well as well. So there's no rumors yet of mates kind of disbanding, but I could see Itachi going to either a Vitality or a K Corp. I think that would fit very, very well, and I think he would prefer that team to his team that he has now, in my opinion. So we'll see how it all pans out. Vitality's not fielding the same roster, and again, you know, I think we should get it from the real source here. So let's look at Alpha Cap here. Zen will be staying with Team Vitality. The future of Alpha and Rado is up in the air. If either will be staying within the organization for next season, I assume Alpha's out, would be my guess. I could see Rado. It just depends how the rosters kind of shake out, if he's with Zen still or not. If he's not with Zen, I could see Rado having a hard time picking up a solid team. But I think he works very well with Zen, and I think they got good vibes. And sometimes you need the vibes, right? So we'll see how it all pans out. But I expect Vitality to be a top team again next year. So we'll see how it pans out. Going back over here, pretty much that's where I'm gonna end it here. I think it's just mostly Just another bunch of tweets. Yeah, not too much going on here. But yes, go at Achilles _XF. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I assume I am. But, it's Europe, so who knows. So go follow him if you want to know all the roster drama that is happening throughout the scene. And, what do you think is going to happen? I think Europe is a mess, but they're just going to probably rearrange puzzle pieces. And we're going to keep probably the same top 4 talent, with maybe you splice an oxygen a bit here or there to those teams. NA, I honestly have no idea. I think NA, if Jack leaves to go to Europe, one, I don't think he will, because I don't think that's the play, because Europe is so top heavy. NA, there's room. Like, NA's 4 is not great, right? Like, you can make majors there. Like, complexity coming in is going to make that a little bit harder, but you can make majors in NA if you're Jack. So if Jack builds his own team, I could very easily see Jack getting one of those top orgs and saying, hey, let me control this. Let me build my own team, and I'll build it out of NA players. Or maybe I bring in some players from Europe, but we play in North America. I could very easily see that happening. Like, personally, I think a great fit for Jack would be Cloud9. I think Cloud9 would like the personality-driven-ness of a team. And then, like, Jack pairing with Squishy on the YouTubes while also letting Jack build the team he wants, I think makes a lot of sense. So I have no inclination of this, but here's my thoughts. Jack to Cloud9, he builds some type of team in NA. I honestly don't know who he brings, because he might bring players from Europe or something like that. T1 picks up First Killer and LJ, and whatever their third is. And that's the 2 big org moves in NA. And I think the 3 best teams in that region will be Jack's team, First Killer, LJ, and whoever, and of course G2. Will Atomic be on that team? Will he not? I think is the big question mark. I assume he will be. I think that's one of the few rosters that would be like, hey, let's give it another go. We were so close, and it's working. So, but I could see Atomic moving. But if he did, I think that he goes to like an apparently Jack or something like that. So we'll see how it all pans out. But I think NA will have like 3 very, very good teams, and then there'll be a 4th team, like kind of mixed with like the space stations and the OGs, with some players to round out your 4th best. That'll compete against complexity for 4th best, I assume, in that region. But that's what I got here. It's a long video. Thank you again, Achilles, for all the info on Twitter. Again, give him a follow. Make sure you follow him. Don't get your info from me or Alpha Kep anymore. You can go straight to him. But I hope you enjoyed my thoughts about all the information that was presented by Achilles. And that's going to do it for me. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.